The concept of good and evil has been a theme for thousands of years, maybe more depending on what you believe. Now in any case, there is one character who is a ringleader for evil deeds inside of the two largest religions in the world, Islam and Christianity. This creature goes by many names: Satan, the devil, Iblis, Diablo, etc. Alright, let's start off at number 10. He is an enemy, and this is a similarity that these religions have. So if you look in the Bible, the term devil and Satan are used interchangeably. The word Satan means adversary or enemy, and the name devil means slanderer or accuser. Another name attributed to Satan in most Christian traditions is Lucifer. And now the name Lucifer appears only once in the Bible in the book of Isaiah, and the name Lucifer means light bearer or carrier of light, and it's sometimes even translated to morning star. Now perhaps the most detailed description of Satan is found in the book of Ezekiel, which I'll read in just a moment. But before I do that, one thing to point out is that according to the Bible, the prophet Ezekiel is ordered to speak to the king of Tyre, and Tyre is a city in Lebanon, and that this king is believed to be a representation of Satan. And you'll see why that's a popular belief when I read the passage. It's found in Ezekiel chapter 28 verses 12 to 17, and it goes as follows: Son of man, take up a lament concerning the king of Tyre and say to him, this is what the sovereign Lord says. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you: carnelian, chrysolite, and emerald, topaz, onyx, and jasper, lapis, lazuli, turquoise, and beryl. Your settings and mountings were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared. You were appointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God. You walked among the fiery stones. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till wickedness was found in you. Through your widespread trade, you were filled with violence, and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God, and I expelled you, guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth. I made a spectacle of you before kings. You'll also find in the Bible that Satan is actually given dominion over angels. And that's found in the book of Revelation chapter 12 verses 7 to 10. It said, Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan. He leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to earth, and his angels with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God, and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters, who accuses them before God day and night, has been hurled down. Now in this passage, Michael is identified in the Bible as the archangel or the ruler of the angels, even more powerful than Gabriel. And Satan is also seen having his team of angels who were thrown down from heaven. And actually, let's look at that point specifically: casting down to earth. In the Bible, in Luke chapter 10 verse 17, it says, The 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. And Jesus replied and said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Now Satan compares the sight of seeing Satan fall from heaven to lightning, which is interesting because it's similar to the Islamic teaching that angels were created from light. It's also believed that Satan can transform into a holy angel, and this is found in the book of 2 Corinthians 11 verses 13 in the Bible. It says, For such as false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ, and no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their works. So that was a look at 5 points from Christianity. We're going to see how they compare now with the 5 next points taken from the Islamic faith. So for the most part, the Quran uses 2 interchangeable names. Iblis comes from the Greek diabolos and corresponds to the English term devil, and the other name, shaitan, comes from the same Hebrew root as the English word Satan. So we see the similarities there in terms of the name. And the next point I want to get into is he's the worst enemy. So Satan in Islam is also labeled as an enemy or adversary. In the Quran, Surah 2, verses 208, it says, "O you who believe, you shall embrace total submission. Do not follow the steps of Satan, for he is your ardent enemy." Also in the Quran, Surah 6, verses 142, it says, "Some livestock supply you with the transportation, as well as bedding materials. Eat from God's provisions to you, and do not follow the steps of Satan. He is your most ardent enemy." We also see in Islam that Satan was cast down to earth. So according to certain Islamic traditions, a supernatural being named Azazel, which is believed to be the original name of Iblis or Satan, and this being was cast down to earth for refusing to bow down to God's creation, Adam. Now, once he was demoted, Azazel, whose name became Iblis, actually worked with a serpent to tempt Adam and Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. Now, the question is he an angel made of light? So, Iblis has long been a figure of speculation among Muslim scholars who have been really trying to explain some of the mystery around Iblis in the Quran as him being an angel or a jinn. And they look at contradictions in the terms as angels were created of light and are actually incapable of sin, while jinns are created from fire and they're able to sin. Now there's various Islamic traditions that point to numerous conflicting thoughts about Iblis, who is simply a jinn, who somehow found his way among the angels of heaven. Perhaps God allowed him, according to some traditions. And similar to the Christian belief, there are some Muslims who believe that the Quran clearly identifies Iblis as an angel. In the Quran, Surah 2, verses 34, it says, "When we said to the angels, fall prostrate before Adam, they fell prostrate except Satan. He refused, was too arrogant, and a disbeliever." Also in the Quran, Surah 7, verses 11, it says, "We created you, then we shaped you. Then we said to the angels, fall prostrate before Adam. They fell prostrate except Iblis, or Satan. He was not with the prostrators." And finally, the last point I want to look at is he a jinn made of fire? So let's take a look at that. Now there's arguments that Iblis or Satan was a jinn also in the Quran. So you'll find in the Quran, Surah 18, verses 50, it says, "And remember, when we said unto the angels, fall prostrate before Adam, they fell prostrate, all except Iblis. He was of the jinn." So according to a major opinion of Muslim scholars, Iblis is from the jinn and created from fire. He, however, was amongst the foremost of the jinn in worship, and he was actually then elevated to the heavens to live among the angels by the will of God. Now this position was taken away from him after he showed arrogance and jealousy and disobedience to God, and he was thrown down upon the earth to be humiliated and completely banished from the heavens. It's believed that he no longer deserved to be in the blessed company of the angels. So although yes, there is some conflicting views about whether or not he is an angel or a jinn, popular Muslim beliefs, the majority of Muslims say that no, Iblis 100% is a jinn. He's not an angel. So let's start off. Fact number 10, who is the devil in Islam anyways? Well, the Arabic term shaitan means adversary, and it's like the English word Satan, and it's used in the Quran in both the singular as well as the plural, and it's often interchangeable with Iblis, who is considered to be a particular Satan or devil. That's like the proper name for him. And because of the disobedience that Iblis portrayed to God, God ejected him from having access to heaven and among the angels and all of that. And we're gonna get a lot more into that in this episode. But this particular figure, Iblis, he tempts Adam and Eve to disobey God. And in that story, he's referred to as Shaitan. Also, sometimes he's referred to as a jinn, giving rise to a lot of different understanding and interpretation about the nature of Satan, aka Iblis, like what's really going on here. But by the way, we're gonna also get more into that later in this episode. But that's just an introduction of who the devil is inside the religion of Islam. Let's move on now to fact number 9. Iblis, as he's called, was also part of God's creation. You can find that in the Quran, Surah 15, verses 27. And it explains that before God created man out of clay from the earth, he created the jinn race. Yeah, specifically it says the jinn race was created from the fire of the Simum. And Simum it's like a desert sandstorm kind of wind. So the idea that the jinn were created by God is also found in the Quran. You can find that in Surah 6 verses 100 and Surah 55 verses 15. Now for Iblis, he was created before Adam and Eve, and he was also present at the time of Adam's creation. And you can find that in Surah 15 verses 28 to 31. However, he wasn't present at the time that the heavens were created. Moving on now to fact number 8. So in the religion of Islam, Iblis, aka the devil, isn't the originator and creator of evil in the world. As he fulfills the role as being Satan, he's simply seen as a tempter who really likes to take advantage of the weakness of humanity, as well as the self-centeredness, the ego, all of that, and really tries to lead people to the path away from God. Next thing that I want to point out is though that angels, they are seen in the religion of Islam as being super loyal to God, and they bowed down to Adam when God told them to do so, but Iblis did not. So this brought up the question of Iblis, like, was he one of the angels or not? Yeah, and this is a pretty interesting point because this is where a lot of Islamic scholars actually disagree. But not just scholars, also Islamic commentators as well. They tend to disagree on this point. Not all of them, but just there's a large amount of them. Now the Quran identifies Iblis as a jinn in Surah 18 verses 50. So some hold the view that the jinn are a type of angel though. Now Tabari, citing the companion Ibn Abbas, he wrote this: Iblis was one of a group of angels called Al-Hin, where the term jinn comes from. They were created of fire. But although there is differences of views about the nature of Iblis, most Muslims do agree that he is a jinn, and jinn is completely separate from the class of angels. Also, according to Islamic traditions, Iblis is known by many different names and titles, such as Abu Mura, which is father of bitterness, and there's Adu Allah, meaning the enemy of God, and Abu al-Harith, which is the father of the plowman. In the Quran, there are actually 7 different accounts about the hatred between Satan and the humans, and this all resulted from his refusal to obey God and bow down to Adam. Those references are Surah 2 verses 30 to 39, Surah 11 verses 11 to 25, Surah 15 verses 26 to 48, Surah 17 verses 61 to 65, Surah 18 verses 50 to 53, Surah 20 verses 115 to 126, and Surah 38 verses 71 to 88. All these accounts, by the way, they differ in length and the details that are included in each of them. Also, Iblis, the devil, yeah, very bad guy. He vows to take revenge by misleading humans. This is referenced in the Quran, Surah 15 verses 39 and 38 verses 82. Because thou hast thrown me out of the way, lo, I will lie in wait for them on the straight way. Then I will assault them from before them and behind them, from their right and their left. Nor wilt thou find in most of them gratitude for your mercies. This, by the way, was taken from Surah 7 verses 16 to 17. Now, although Iblis is often compared to the devil in Christian theology, in Islam, the idea is rejected that Satan is an opponent of God, and also it is opposed that there is some sort of struggle between God and the devil. So Iblis might either be regarded as the most monotheist or the greatest sinner ever. And it's also believed that Iblis did not become an unbeliever because of his disobedience, but because of attributing injustice to God by saying that the command to bow down before Adam was completely inappropriate. There's also no sign of any revolt in heaven or war in terms of like all the angels fighting in the Quran. That's not found there like it's found in the Bible. And it doesn't mention that the devil is trying to take God's throne in the religion of Islam at all. Now, according to certain Islamic traditions, the supernatural being named Azazel, I've heard also pronounced Azazel, is by the way viewed as the original name for Iblis, the devil or Satan. And this being was cast down to earth when he refused refused to bow down before God's creation, Adam. Once he was cast down, Azazel, whose name then became Iblis, spoke through a serpent to tempt Adam and Eve with the forbidden fruit. So Iblis is also considered as the leader of those angels who fought the earthly jinn as well. And in terms of this traditional belief, it kind of falls more in line with the Christian view of Satan. Of course, there are some variations though, but this is not the most popular Islamic view, although it does exist in the religion. And finally, the fact I want to end off on is Satan is not just seen as an enemy or adversary in the religion of Islam, but is also seen as the worst of all enemies of human beings. In the Quran, Surah 2, verses 208, it says, "O you who believe, you shall embrace total submission. Do not follow the steps of Satan, for he is your most ardent enemy." Also in the Quran, Surah 6, verses 142, it says, "Some livestock supply you with transportation as well as bedding materials. Eat from God's provisions to you, and do not follow the steps of Satan. He is your most ardent enemy." We'll be looking at 10 surprising types of demons. Okay, so let's start off with number 10. We have the familiar. In European folklore, familiar spirits, also known as simply familiars or animal guides, are believed to be supernatural beings that would help witches and magicians in practicing their magic. As the legends became more and more, there have been many accounts that familiars would appear in different forms, like animals, or sometimes as humans or human-like figures. Next up, at number 9, we have the jinn. Some of you are very familiar with the term jinn. Well, a jinn is a supernatural being, and it is sometimes spelled as D-J-I-N-N in English, and also referred to as a genie. They were mentioned in early Arabian mythology and later Islamic theology. They are also supernatural beings that are below the level of angels. They are found in the writings commonly in the Quran, the 72nd surah, which is titled Surat al-Jinn, and other Islamic texts, and they live among humans in this world. The Quran says that the jinn are created out of a smokeless and scorching fire, but they are still physical beings. Number 8 brings us to the Jikininki. These are human-eating ghosts. They are spirits of greedy, selfish, or unholy people who are cursed after death to seek out and eat human corpses. It is said that someone by the name of Muso was roaming alone through the mountains in the Mino district of Japan when he lost his way. And it was pretty dark where he was, but he ended up seeing on top of a hill an old Anjitsu, which is the home of priests who live secluded lives. So he walked to the peak of the hill and he asked the inhabitant if he might stay the night. But the inhabitant was an old priest who completely refused him. Although he did tell him that he could find food and a place to sleep in a hamlet that's close by. The priest ended up revealing himself as a Jikininki who was cursed to roam as a spirit after his death to continuously feed on humans due to his life of selfishness. Number 7, a very popular type of demon, especially in pop culture, we have the poltergeist. Now this is German for noisy ghost or noisy spirit, and it's a type of ghost or demon that is responsible for physical disturbances like loud noises and objects being moved or destroyed. Most accounts of poltergeist show them as being able to touch, bite, push, and even speak to humans. Like I mentioned, they're also capable of moving objects or making them levitate, can move all the heavy kind of furniture, knock on doors, knock on windows, and they have traditionally been described as spirits who haunt a particular person rather than haunting a specific place. The demon at number 6 is succubus. Succubus is a demon in female form or a supernatural entity in folklore that shows up in dreams and takes the figure of a woman in order to seduce men, typically through intimate activity. They have also been known to cause sleep paralysis and induce, the wet dreams that people have. According to certain religious traditions, repeated intimate relations with a succubus can result in a decline in physical health and mental health. Succubuses are said to be jealous spirits and in some cases take the life of those who get closely involved with them. Continuing with number 5, we have incubus. An incubus is a demon that typically appears in male forms. And according to myths and legends, they are depicted with women in some sort of way, which also links them to intimate activities with them. So you can pretty much though call these the masculine version of the succubus, which I just looked at. They induce the same kind of dreams, it's just in a masculine version. Abaizu is at number 4. In myth and folklore in Europe especially, Abaizu is the name of a female demon. Abaizu was blamed for miscarriages and infant mortality, and she is said to be motivated by envy because she herself is infertile. So she punishes other women to try to feel better about her own situation. Next up at number 3, we have Barbatos. Barbatos is an Earl and Duke of Hell. He rules 30 legions of demons and has 4 kings as his companions to help rule his legion of demons. His name comes from the Latin word barbatus, meaning bearded old man or philosopher. He can speak to animals and can tell the future, apparently anyways. He also can apparently help lead people to hidden treasures. He is the 8th demon, the Lesser Key of Solomon. Next up, let's look at Surgot. Surgot is a lesser demon of hell, and he's known as the one who opens all locks because he's able to understand and open any single lock that is created in the world. It is believed that Surgot was once summoned to the physical world by someone in hopes that he would give him knowledge to invent a new device or mechanism that would greatly benefit the world. Now, this mechanism ended up being the locks that we use for doors, and the summoning was the first appearance of Surgot, and where he first appeared is believed to be located in Nineveh, which is the ancient capital of Assyria. But you see, getting this knowledge, it came at a big price, and this price was that he would be able to forever haunt those who would have locks in very dark homes, since the darkness is the atmosphere that Surgot likes the most. When someone becomes Surgot's target, what he does is he pursues them without end, no matter how hard the person tries to escape. And once he gets to his victims, he scares them and terrifies them with images that in many cases make them go completely crazy. Let's end off this episode with number 1, the ghoul. Ghoul. These are demonic beings believed to inhabit burial grounds and other deserted places. In ancient Arabic folklore, ghouls are a very evil class of jinn, and they were said to be the offspring of Iblis, also known as Satan, who is the prince of evil according to Islam. Ghouls are capable of changing forms, but you can always spot one if you look for this sign. They have hooves like donkeys, and they aren't able to change that, no matter what form they appear in. Yes, ghouls, they roam the desert and other deserted places, and they often disguise themselves as attractive women, and they try to distract people that are traveling, and if they're successful in distracting them, they end up eating them. Yeah. Very, very evil creatures. I'll be sharing 10 scary and evil creatures found in religion. Starting at number 10, here we have the Nephilim. Goliath wasn't the only giant that was mentioned in the Bible. Possibly he was the descendant of an entire race of giants known as the Nephilim. Theologians, however, they have various different beliefs about exactly who the Nephilim were. For example, some believe that they were the children of angels who had children with human women, but others teach that they were simply the descendants of Cain. Either way, the Nephilim were huge and strong creatures that looked to oppose the ways of God, and due to their size, they were feared by most people. Next up at number 9, we look at the Jinn. The Jinn are beings that live in a parallel universe to humans. According to Islamic texts like the Quran, they are made out of smokeless fire, and they were given free will by God, so they can either do good or they can do evil. But most jinn are evil, and that's why they have a reputation of being an evil race entirely. There are various types and classes of jinn. Some can shapeshift and fly, as well as interact with humans by calling out to them while still remaining invisible. They can even possess a human being and cause them to do all manner of evil things. Let's look at Azazel next. The Book of Enoch links Azazel to the biblical story of the fallen angels. Azazel is one of the leaders of the class of angels known as the Watchers during a time before the global flood of Prophet Noah. He taught people warfare and how to make swords and how to make armor, as well as he taught women the art of deception through makeup. Azazel also taught witchcraft to the people, and he was a leader in corrupting the ways of humans so that they can go away from the path of God. Now Azazel is bound and chained in a fixed location until the day of judgment. All right, we're gonna go to the Eastern religions like Buddhism, Hinduism, and Sikhism for this one. And here we find Preta. Pretas, they're actually a type of being, and people who are greedy or jealous in this life, they become cursed by karma and they return to the world, but then they become filled with this constant painful anger and thirst that can't be satisfied at all. So no matter how much they eat or they drink, Pretas, they are never satisfied. Either they can't find food and drink, or they can't even consume it when they find it. And because of this, Pretas are often depicted as just pretty much skin and bone, as if they were living mummies. Yeah, very scary. No human being wants to have a curse like that put on them. Next up, let's look at succubus. A succubus is a demon in a female form, and succubuses are very popular in Wicca as well as other modern occult groups. Succubus show up in dreams and they take on the figure of a woman in order to seduce men, typically through very intimate actions. They've also been known to cause sleep paralysis as well as trigger wet dreams. According to religious traditions, having these repeated intimate relations with succubus, it can result in the decline of your health as well as even cause death. Continuing this episode now, at number 5, we have the Pishacha. Pishachas are flesh-eating demons in Buddhist and Hindu mythology. Pishacha is the spirit of a person who committed fraud as well as adultery or other similar criminal acts. And they have a dark complexion with bulging veins and purple eyes. When it comes to their powers, well, they can shapeshift as well as they can possess human beings. And that causes a lot of illness and abnormalities inside of people. They can also remain invisible and it can appear to people whenever they want. Jingtian is at number 4. Now, seeing this creature honestly would be straight up creepy. He's from Chinese folk religion and mythology. Jingtian is a giant warrior who served under the legendary Emperor Yan. When Emperor Yan was defeated by the Yellow Emperor, Jingtian challenged the Yellow Emperor to a fight, and Jingtian ended up losing his head in that fight. Surprisingly, instead of dying, Jingtian lived and he continued to look for his head. Well, not really look, but he was in search of his head. Jingtian, he ended up giving up after some time and he started growing a new face actually. So his nipples are his eyes and his belly button is his mouth. He's depicted as a headless giant with a face on his body who rages against the gods. Number 3 brings us to the ghoul. A ghoul is a demonic being believed to inhabit burial grounds as well as other places that are deserted. Now, in ancient Arabic folklore, ghouls are said to be the offspring of Iblis, who is the devil in Islam, and ghouls are able to change their form. But here's the thing with them, they aren't able to change the appearance of their feet, which look like donkey hooves. Ghouls live in places like the desert, and they often disguise themselves as women to lure travelers and eventually eat them. Next up, let's look at Azhi-Dahaka. In Zoroastrianism, Azhi-Dahaka has been described as having 6 eyes, 3 mouths, and 3 heads. He knows all of the sins that people can commit in the world, and whenever he is wounded, he doesn't bleed blood, he bleeds snakes and rats and various insects. Ugh. According to Zoroastrian prophecy, he's going to be the one that eats the world's livestock, as well as he's going to eat a third of humanity during the end times. And that brings us to number 1 on this list, Satan, the greatest enemy of God and creation. He is most commonly referred to in the Bible as the devil or Satan, among other names. He is also commonly depicted as a fallen angel. Satan is a transliteration of the Hebrew word which means adversary or opponent, and Iblis in Islam is the personal name of the devil. The main characteristics of Satan, aside from his extreme pride and arrogance, is his ability to put evil suggestions into the minds of men and women. According to the Bible, in the book of John, Jesus describes the devil by saying this: "He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies." Also, all demons and fallen creatures aim to do his bidding. So it's no surprise that the being who inspires all other evil acts, including murder, pathological lying, causing torture and torment, as well as every other evil thing, would be number 1 on this list.